Hi, this is Rainer. I'm founder of the Mindful Leader, your host today, also co-founder of the New You. My mission is to cultivate more presence in leaders, to upgrade their mind and body. And the idea or the reason why I'm interested in this particular mission is I want to help them to maximize their contributions while significantly increasing their leadership effectiveness, and that results in a new leadership style, which I refer to leading with presence, which is, in my experience, a key ingredient for a new workplace. Today, I have a very special guest here, Daniel Rieber, and I'm really happy that he also took time out of his busy schedule to that we can talk, share some insights. So this will be there will be a lot of good stuff coming up today. I'm sure. Maybe I share first a little bit and do an introduction about Daniel. Daniel and I, we met here in Berlin a few years ago, and I was at that point blogging. I started my blog on the Mindful Leader, and I was talking about mindful leadership, and then somehow Daniel found this article. We connected, and we're both very passionate about this topic. And at that point, there was not much going on in this space around mindful leadership or mindfulness in the workplace, at least here in Berlin. So this was just this very early phase. And since then, a lot of stuff happened. There is a lot of, I experienced a strong momentum in the past years. The topic is much more widespread now, common also in companies, integrated. Not many modern companies building a new workplace are adopting some of these principles. So there's a lot of things happening, and we'll talk about this a little bit. So Daniel, at that point, was also looking in terms of how to position himself in this area, doing something new. And then nowadays, since this is now quite a few years ago, he has become a mindful leadership coach. He's also an advisor. He has more than 12 years of experience in digital space, high-tech space as well. He was VP of marketing with AdSquare. He's very deep into new work topics, agility topics. He's also the co-founder of WEVOLVE, who are focusing on bringing mindfulness-based programs into the workplace. He's also co-founder of the Mindful Leadership Circle. This was one of the first things I also still remember, since I'm also contributing to the Mindful Leadership Circle, an effort that started also a few years back. And now membership, there's many people in there involved, not just in Berlin, but also other places. And Daniel can talk a little bit more about this. He's also country director for a Mobile Marketing Association in Germany. He's a podcaster, so check it out. We'll put some link, obviously, in the show notes on his podcast. There's a lot of cool topics here. And at the end, I think, since his mission and focus, you can hear it on the title of the podcast, really searching for the here and now, right? Being here in the present moment is a key aspect, and he wants to also bring these ideas into the workplace. And so WEVOLVE, I think this is something I wanted to talk about today, is really how one of the channels Daniel is doing this, and then later on going deeper in some of the results they achieved so far, and how this whole idea of bringing mindfulness or bringing new ideas to leadership into the workplace, what kind of impact there is. Because at the end, it's always about show me the numbers, right? And that's what's important, right? And since my approach also is, I always focus on measurability. I'm looking at clear KPIs, key performance indicators. When I work on the body aspects, I'm tracking for me personally, more than 200-300 different biomarkers to see how I'm doing from a body side. And even on the mind side, I developed quite a few biomarkers and KPIs that help me on this as well, which is kind of helpful because you can actually see what's going on. Anyhow, this was a longer introduction, but Daniel, basically, he has so many things going on. And again, welcome today. And maybe you can share also a little bit context on about yourself and your current intention.
At the end, it's all about numbers. Yeah, thanks for having me, Rainer. I'm really excited to be here today, and I can really remember the first time we met. It was actually when you worked at Zalando, and I interviewed you for my podcast. I think it's 4 or 5 years ago, and we talked about mindful leadership. And now, 4 years later, I'm sitting here and you're doing an interview with me, which is exciting. So I think you mentioned a lot. Actually, my journey is I worked 12 years in the digital industry in different positions, also in leadership positions and founder positions. And I found out for myself how important mindfulness is for my everyday life, for both health, but also for efficiency, for creativity, for making good decisions. I became a coach, a systemic coach, and a trainer for mindfulness. And I met Dr. Nico Röhnpagel, who is a very good friend now and a partner, and you know him very well, Rainer. We just talked about him. And Nico and I founded WEVOLVE, and WEVOLVE is a consultancy for new leadership and mindful company culture. And we're really excited to work with a lot of big companies, including Zalando, including Axel Springer, Mercedes-Benz, eBay, just to name a few. And yeah, I think that it's so important to talk about that topic. And as you said, it's really evolving. There is something happening in companies, in the consciousness of people over the last years. And I'm happy to contribute to this and to be part.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And what you just said, evolving, is that basically also related to WEVOLVE, right? I think it sounds like, was that the motivation to maybe share a little bit about WEVOLVE, how this got started?
Yeah, sure. So we started with the name The Mindful Company because our idea was to bring mindfulness to companies and also to be a company that is mindful. And I still like the name a lot, but it's really focusing on the mindfulness aspect. And mindfulness is only part of what we do. And also mindfulness often comes into a box. So when people hear mindfulness, they think about health, or they think about esoteric and crazy meditation experience and so on. So we wanted to focus on what is actually what we do, and it is evolving. So it's further developing yourself, but it's especially evolving in a group of people. So in a team or in a company. So we found the word we evolve, put it together, and now we are WEVOLVE. Mm-hmm. And I think that works very good with what we actually do and what our mission is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I can see this, and it is what you just mentioned. Also, the word "we," the team. I mean, the company at the end of the day is a mental construct. There are people. There is a team, right? And there is also usually the way when I started into this was looking at these. At mindfulness in a workspace, I noticed that on one side there are the leaders, business or tech leaders, other type of leaders, whatever the role is, but they have a significant influence on the culture and overall impact on the company. There's employees, and so at the end of the day, on one side there is this what I refer to more like a top-down approach, where you help leaders to become more, cultivate more presence, help them become more using some of these, what we both refer to mindful leadership principles in their adopting into their leadership style. And that usually has a ripple effect on the whole company. But then there's also the team, which seems what also WEVOLVE is focusing on, really to support the team in different aspects of introducing mindfulness in the workplace. Could you maybe share a few just examples on people listening what this means to help the teams basically benefit from this.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned the top-down and the bottom-up approach, and we actually try to do both and to bring both together. And we do work with a lot of companies, but it's always different. So each company is individual, is different. In some companies, we really have the chance to start with the management team and then with the leaders, and then we go to the teams. Mm-hmm. And as you said, this has a strong ripple effect. And also it allows the employees to spend time with mindfulness, to spend time with self-leadership and with all the capabilities that we train. On the other side, sometimes there are companies where there is a lot of demand in the team, and there are some teams who are forerunners and who really want to try something new, and they're very progressive. So in some companies, we also work with the team, but not with the management team. And this is also super interesting because there is a power generating, and this power communicates more and more into the company and wants change. So in the best case, you have both. Yeah, you work with the team and you work with the management and the leaders. To answer your question, we developed a program, a mindful leadership program, which is separated in 3 different phases. And you said I can share some screens. And we did a really great case study. So let me show just one of the screens right now, so to explain how the program works. So what we do is we have, normally you can't see it here on the screen, an inspirational session. So a 1-hour webinar where we present to the whole team what the topic is about. Because there are a lot of people who are interested, but they don't know what happens. There are also people who are not really interested, but they have 1 hour that they can spend and where they can learn. And then they make the decision if they want to join the program. And then we do have an intensive workshop. If we do it on site physically, we have 2 full days training. And here in this case, you can see the digital version where we have 4 half days of intensive training. And then after this intensive training, where you learn all the tools and where you learn about the science behind it, then we have an integration phase. An integration phase means that we have 6 weeks of group coaching, where it's about your individual, but also your team habits, behaviors, and where you can try out new things and try to establish new routines. So our program is about teaching you the skills and the mindset, and then supporting you developing your own way. And what you can see on the slide also, and we will talk later about it, is that we do a pre-survey. So we ask the participants 12 KPIs, 12 parameters. And then after the integration phase, we have a post-survey where we ask exactly the same parameters on a scale from 1 to 5. And then we can calculate an uplift. So we can see what was the impact of the program on those important KPIs. And then 12 weeks later, so 3 months later, we do a long-term survey so that we can see, was this effect just short-term, or did it really change the habit and behavior and mindset of people? Just to give a first understanding of how we work. And we do everything in digital format right now, which works quite well. But normally we would also try to work in person. And I'm really looking forward to do my next in-person workshop, which will be in September in Zurich. So it has been a while.
But it seems so. This is great. I mean, it shows like a nice structure, process that probably you guys iterated in the past years to tweak this, and so that's a good thing. It evolved. Now with COVID in the past year, you mentioned that doing everything virtual. Was it? I'm sure this was a challenge, but in general, did it also work very well? So just to get a sense of all these things that you could do, does it fully work virtually as well?
Yeah. So when I started with my coaching and training, when I became a coach and trainer, I said I don't want to work with digital anymore because I want to work with people and not sit in front of a screen. And there is so much happening in a room when you're in a one-on-one coaching or when you're with a group. So there's so much on so many levels where you can read the room, where you can feel into the room, where you can understand the dynamics in the room. So I always thought that you cannot do this kind of training, this kind of in-depth training virtually. And then because of Corona, we had to move it to digital. And the result is that there are really some benefits of it, actually. Of course, there are some things missing, but there are also new things and a lot of benefits. So to give just one example, we always use Zoom for our sessions. And in Zoom, you have this, and also in Teams and the other programs it's coming, you have this gallery view. So you can see all your colleagues on one screen. Yeah. So while you're looking on your screen, you see like 20 faces of your colleagues, and you can immediately see when something changes, when someone has a question or when people are excited and so on. And in real life, when you're sitting in a room, maybe it works with a circle, but it doesn't work when you just look in front. You don't have this direct communication to your people. And another example is people are sitting at home in their safe spaces. Yeah, so they don't need time to really arrive in the location and to feel comfortable in the location. So they are already in a safe space, and we can then work with them from there. So I'm excited about working virtually with companies. And at the end, I hope it will be a hybrid solution. Yeah, so 2 days in person and then 6 weeks virtual, where we can use both channels.
Makes sense. Now, I wanted to also, you mentioned that earlier, mindfulness for the sake of being mindful, right? But at the end, I think the idea is, how can this help as a tool in the workplace? I want to get a little bit perspective on, because people, as you said before, right, they think first about meditation, and so then the whole team is meditating maybe for 4 hours, right? Nobody is doing some work. I wanted to get a sense how you position mindfulness, or in general mindfulness practice, to basically make some impact at work.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I just had to start a new presentation for that, because I have a perfect slide for you. And for those who are just listening to us, I can also explain what the viewers can see right now. So we developed a model, and I think that this model really answers your question. So it explains how mindfulness can bring benefits into your everyday work life. So the basic idea is that change happens from the inside out. Yeah, change always starts with you, and then with you collaborating, interacting with people. So we always start with the self, and then in the next step, we talk about the team. And then if you're a leader, that would be the third step. And also, the idea of mindful leadership is observe, reflect, act. So first, you observe what actually is there without judging, just observing, open, curious, compassionate. Then you reflect. What is important for me? What are my values? What are my goals? Where do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? And then when you know where you are and where you want to go to, then the next step is act. Yeah. So find the next step on your journey, do it consciously, take all the responsibility for this. So these are the 2 dimensions: self, team leader, and observe, reflect, act. And with these 2 dimensions, our mindful leadership model opens up 9 modules. So imagine we're doing a 2-day workshop with a team. Then at the first day, we would talk about the self. So we start with a session on self-awareness. What are my thoughts? What are my emotions? How is my body doing? Then we go into the mindset. What are my values? What is important for me? What kind of person do I want to be? And then we go to self-leadership. How can I lead myself? How can I motivate myself? How can I be the best version of myself? And then on the second day, we switch from looking at ourselves to looking at the person in front of us. and to develop other awareness or empathy. So to understand what is the person in front of me feeling, what are their emotions. And then we talk about the culture. So I know my values, I have to learn about your values, and maybe we can find shared values that are the basis for our culture, our working together. And then the last session would be about co-creation. So how can we communicate and work effectively together so that the result is bigger than just all the participants. The sum of it is bigger than just the elements. So I hope this gives a little better understanding. So we truly believe that mindfulness and emotional intelligence is the basis, the fundament to develop all the skills that we need in those times of acceleration and complexity. We do need emotional intelligence. We do need resilience. We do need self-leadership. We do need agility. We do need a growth mindset. And for all this, it's important to start with yourself and to start with observing, with self-awareness.
That makes sense. So it is basically mindfulness as a tool, as a method to cultivate these different aspects. And self-awareness, which I personally also think is one of the key capabilities that can be cultivated by presence, by mindfulness training, exercises, whatever you do. This is an interesting thing to, based on your experience, since you're working now for quite some time with a variety of companies, the teams there and everything. Do you see that self-awareness is actually increasing in general? So it's hard to quantify this because we have to put like a number on each person. What's the current level of self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
Harder, but from your subjective assessment, would you say that self-awareness is something that is more evolving nowadays? It's actually increasing in general, because that's one of the this was actually your first module in self, right? What's your assessment on this?
So in our bubble, so we are working mainly with startups, with digital companies, with very progressive and international companies. Or when we work with traditional companies, we always work with the teams and the people who are more progressive within the company. So in our bubble, we can see that self-awareness is developing, that it is increasing, and that it becomes more and more important for people. And I think the main reason is that in our new world of work, it becomes more and more important to lead yourself. Yeah, you get more self-responsibility. You work as an individual, as a personal brand in a company where you work in different cross-functional teams and where you have to take responsibility for whole projects or whole areas. So I think that the new world of work demands for self-awareness and self-leadership, and that this really drives the awareness for this. And in addition to this, due to Corona, what we also observed is that in the last 1.5 years, people really understood, especially HR, especially leader, that it is important to take care of yourself, that it's important to manage yourself, because you're sitting in your room, in your flat the whole day, and you don't have this social construct anymore. Yeah, so no one is looking at you if you take breaks. No one is looking for you if you do have a healthy lunch. You just organize yourself. And we really had an increasing demand after Corona, because mindfulness and self-leadership has become super important. And also empathy. How is my colleague doing? Also culture. How can we create a room of trust? How can we create a room of connection when everyone is sitting at home? Super interesting times.
What about self-awareness with leaders? I've been working in the past. I've always seen this, and there was sometimes not a lot of self-awareness there. those were the worst leaders, and they caused actually the most destruction, toxic environments, and so on. In your view currently, do you see a change there as well? More awareness in leaders to actually embrace those ideas?
Yeah. Slowly, yeah. I would say there are like two groups. So one group is three groups. One group is the group of people who didn't get it yet. They don't think that self-awareness is important. They even don't understand about the issue. Then there's this group, and this is really becoming bigger and bigger, of people who understand that self-awareness is important, who also read a book or listen to a podcast about it. Yeah, but they don't practice it, because self-awareness is a skill. It's like a muscle we have to train. And then there's the third group of people who understand that it's important and also train it, like meditating, like doing mindfulness practice, like going on a retreat or going in a kloster. I don't know the English word right now.
Monastery.
Monastery, right? Like, and there are a lot of people doing that. So I just had a really interesting conversation with someone who is leading the mindfulness program for Daimler, and they, since a few years, they send a lot of people, to a few thousand of people, to monasteries and do mindfulness practice there. Yeah. So in my bubble, there is a really increasing number of people who are aware of that, and also a number of people who practice. But it's slowly, yeah, it's getting slowly there.
Yeah, I think that correlates also with my observation, since I also work with a variety of leaders, and I see that there is some momentum there for sure. And the other point you made, it is at the end of the day it works if you do regular training. I refer to this as mind management. There's different aspects that you can do. It doesn't come for free, right? There is something you have to do, something, train the muscle of your mind, so to speak, in a variety of different aspects, right? Then you see results which can be shown with KPIs for sure. I've seen this with really transformational results in a duration of 3 to 6 months or longer. There is something happening here. But going back now, I always ask for the why, right?
Yeah.
So why are we even talking about this? And what are let's talk about some of the challenges around in companies that motivated you guys with WEVOLVE to basically look at the question of why, right? Why should we care, basically, as a company?
Yeah. That is a good question, and I could have a really short or really long answer. So I try to find something in between. So on a global level, we think that there are a lot of challenges for our society, for humankind. And there's this really nice saying, this quote from Albert Einstein, who said, "You can't solve the problems you created with a specific kind of thinking with the same thinking." I don't know the English translation for it, so I only know it in German. Yeah, so if we want to change our society, if we want to find solutions for climate change, for social injustice, for all these topics, we have to find a new mindset, a new thinking. And to develop this, we have to start with ourselves. So this is the basic idea that Nico and I share. So we don't want to change the world, but we think that if you want to change the world, you have to start with your self-awareness, and you have to start with understanding yourself. And then you can understand other humans, and then you can connect to being part of the nature and being part of this planet. So this is like the bigger picture. On a much more specific level, we work with a lot of companies who have these new work environments. I also worked in companies where I experienced it myself. And there's a big opportunity here. So we can change the world of work to the better. We can unfold the human potential. On the same side, there is a lot of threats here, a lot of challenges, because more and more companies are using these wonderful tools, but they use it to just optimize the revenues. And they don't really care about the people in the team. So they just want to, they give you more self-responsibility, but on the same hand, they say, now you have to do 120% more. Or they give you a mindfulness seminar and say, okay, now you're mindful, so don't complain about stress anymore. The stress is now your responsibility. So this is what we see, and we want to fight against that development. Yeah, we want to support employees, to support leaders, to support companies in becoming what we call human-centered organizations. So organizations where it's about the potential of the humans and where it's about the well-being and it's about thriving and really being in your full strength.
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah, and Einstein, he was referring to level of consciousness, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Smart guy.
He already knew those things a long time ago. Going to mindful leadership in general, there is, I'm sure, 3 or 4, I would say, objectives that then when companies look at this, when leaders look at this, why should we care? Could you share maybe 2, 3 of these objectives that make it worthwhile to get into this?
Let's have a look at the case study that I brought with me, and then we can have this with one specific example. Yeah. So I will share my screen now. So we worked with a leading European e-commerce company. Unfortunately, I can't say the name because we don't have the approval for communicating it. And we worked with the customer care team. And you know that the customer care team, they are at the forefront. So they have to communicate, they have to switch from one call to another. They have to regulate their emotions and so on. So it's very challenging for them. And when we started working with them, the lockdown started. So we experienced with them going to the home office, being isolated, feeling lonely, not feeling connected to the company and so on. So we do have these general challenges here of a customer care team. We have the general challenges of people working in a digital company in a high-paced environment, and those specific challenges coming with COVID-19. And the goals that we set with the company, but also in general, is we want to help to have focused attention, empathic communication, stress regulation, and a growth mindset. So these are the 4 clusters, the 4 areas that we optimized our program for and that we want to support companies with. Here in this specific case, it was the goal to stay focused in times of complexity and overwhelm, being empathic with customers and team members in challenging conversations, developing a growth mindset and transform challenges in opportunities, and regulating stress and establishing a healthy work-life balance. So when you remember, I said that we always do this pre and post surveys. So what we did here is, let me jump to that slide. We ask the participants of the program 12 questions, and those questions are in the 4 clusters. So for each cluster, we have 3 questions. And we could see that we had an overall uplift with this mindful leadership program of 24%. And you can see that especially in stress regulation, it was 44%. And the lowest number here is empathic communication. But the reason for this is that the number, the absolute number, was already pretty high before we started to work with them, because those people are really trained in empathic communication because they are at the forefront. So this is quite interesting numbers and very positive. And then we did the same survey 12 weeks later. And you can see here that still we had a 19% uplift. So 24% uplift directly after the program and 90% uplift 12 weeks later. Mm-hmm. And here you can see in detail the questions that we asked and the uplift that we measured. And I think that it's just super interesting to see that you can, even with and it is quite short, to do just 2 days of training and 6 weeks of coaching. You can also have a 1-year training or everyday practice. But even in this short time, we really had changes, and the client here was super happy. And yeah, we just started a new cohort, or actually 2 cohorts now after our summer break in August. One with the customer care team and one with another team. And yeah, it's amazing, really fulfilling.
That is great. Also to clarify, we did this initial study right after the program, so that means people were learning, they were integrating a few new habits, trying to cultivate a few new habits. And you've seen this lift in particular areas, but then when you did the longer one, was it 6 months out, or how much out?
3 months, yeah.
3 months out, right? So that suggests that people took these learnings, actually forming new habits, and then these habits that they were forming seemed then to generate and amplify those results. And so there is a sustainable effect here going on, right? So it is changing something, not just for
absolutely
after the workshop, but because of these new habits, things are coming up for them.
Yeah. But I think we have to be careful. So of course, what we see is that if you just do a 2-day training, the impact falls down directly after 1 week. It's coming from vacation, you come to the office 2 days later, you need vacation, right? So from our point of view, this 6-week integration phase is so important, because we support people finding their own individual way. But we think that in addition to this, you also as a company have to offer like a weekly training, an extensive or an advanced workshop, and so on, so that you keep people in this mindset. You can't do just a program and then think, okay, now it runs for itself. There has to be some kind of support, some kind of offering. And it does not have to be with our company. It can also be self-organized. I remember that when you worked at Zalando, you also were part of the guild, right? The Mindfulness Guild, and you had mindfulness practice, and it was totally self-organized.
Yeah, it was completely self-organized. And some people would take advantage of it. I think the cool thing is we had even a meditation room.
Yeah,
it was a conference room dedicated to meditation, and people used it and self-organized it.
Yes.
Going back to some of the results, you talked about focused attention, growth mindset, stress regulation was a big one, the emphatic communication. But looking at these different topics there, could you share maybe just a few examples on what people actually learned or basically did in terms of activities, so to actually make progress in these areas?
Yeah.
Just on a high level.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen again with the 12 questions that we ask, and I will just pick one out. And it is from the section of focused attention. Before I start a task, I reflect on what is most important now. So I think this is so important. A lot of people just start working and they come from one task to another, and including myself, right? And I think you know that too, Rainer, that you come in this mode, like this tunnel view, and you're just working, email coming in, Slack coming in, and people think that they have to become faster and faster and faster. But the opposite is the result, is the truth. If you take a break and you take a moment to reflect, is this what I'm doing really important or not? Is this really counting into my OKRs, into my objectives and key results? And the way I'm doing it right now, is it the smartest way, or is there maybe a way to automate it? Is there a way to find a shortcut, right? So it makes so much sense to, before start a task, take a moment to reflect. And you can see here on the results that with the program, we improved this capability by 39%. Yeah. And how do we do that? We give a lot of tools. So we have like 25 mindfulness tools in our program, and we also give tasks and challenges. So, for example, one challenge could be the Pomodoro technique. You might have heard about that. So you sit down and you start a timer for 20 minutes. And the moment the timer rings, you just take a moment, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and then you ask yourself, how am I doing right now? And what am I doing right now? Does it make sense? And then you start the next 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, you have the timer again and you take a moment. And you can do that for hours. I'm doing it quite a lot when I have phases where I have really deep work phases, where I really have to create something. And it's so interesting to learn about yourself, how you are. For example, I'm an expert in pixel moving. I don't know if you heard about this thing. So I start writing a text or working on a presentation, and then instead of doing the really important things and making decisions and finding good bullet points and so on, I move the pixels. Yeah, or this font has to be a little bit bigger, and this logo can be a little bit more left. And really diving into this, and it doesn't make sense at all because the presentation is not better because of some pixels you moved or the font size. So you can do that. You can do that at the end. You can do that when you did the important job, but you should not do it while you are working on it. So I like this picture of a painter. A painter who paints a big picture does not start on the bottom left and paints everything in perfect and then goes straight to the right. And what a painter does is first they do the outlines. And then when the outlines are done, they start with the first coloring. And when the first coloring is done, they look at it and they say, okay, maybe I need a new element here, and so on. So you start from zooming out and then zooming in step by step. And this is how smart work should be done. And I think that our program here can be part of this process to become a smart worker.
No, I see this. Makes a lot of sense. And so for this category of focus, it seems then there is a list of different methods that they can choose from, that they can learn, see what sticks, what they like, what they don't like. And then
Absolutely.
as a result, even if you do few of them, you see this increase in focus and also over time. Now, there was the other aspect around stress regulation. And one of the biggest one I've seen in there around I call it the harsh inner voice, self-critique, right? And I've seen that, to be honest, this is one when I work with leaders on helping them to become more stress resilient. I know this is one of the big topics is your own inner critic is so strong, right? And you're actually so mean to yourself. If you would actually dump out these thoughts, like if you could write them all down and bring them to the paper and look at them, if you were actually to say those things to someone else, right, this person wouldn't probably stick around with you and would run away, right? It's sometimes it's really mean stuff, and you say that to yourself most of the time. And so this is so important to just be more friendly, to cultivate these more gentle mindset toward yourself. And it looks like this is exactly the biggest impact there. Any guidance? Any guidance on how you help people on that particular one?
Yeah, I'm actually very thankful that you mentioned this, and I was thinking about mentioning it myself when I was talking about focus, because this is really a very important part, and for most of the people it is the biggest learning, as you said. So we asked the question, I am friendly to myself when things go wrong, and for those who can't see the slide right now, we have a 61% uplift after the program. And the uplift is so high because when you look at the absolute numbers, and we don't have them here on the slide, you see that it's super low before the program. Because we work with high performers. We work with people who really want to do a perfect job and who really want to thrive and who want to do a career and want to to participate in this high-paced work environment. And I'm one of those people too. So I know very well that you have this inner voice that is very critical, that sometimes is very harsh and even unfair. And what we do in the workshop is that we help the participants to be aware that there is this inner voice, and we make them aware that they would never speak to a good friend or to their son or daughter or to their partner in the way they talk to themselves. And this realization is amazing. And then after being aware of this, we have the negativity bias, we have this inner voice, this inner critic. Then we strengthen their resources. So we, for example, introduce the inner mentor. So the positive voice that the voice that loves you and that wants to give you the best and to be that you're happy. So, for example, there's this one practice where you write a letter to yourself from a point of view of someone who loves you and who wishes you well. And it's the first time we did it, I was a little bit unsure if this is the right method to work with a experienced leader. But actually, this is one of the methods where you have the biggest learning effect, where people really have those insight moments and where they start to realize that they can directly change how they talk to themselves. And this has impact on how they communicate to others, especially to their team members. So I think this, so compassion and self-compassion is very key in mindfulness practice, and it's very important in our program.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's why when I look at these different areas, so for some of the listeners, if they want to get some practical ideas out of this session today, it looks like what you mentioned before, the focus part seems like a great one where you can get a lot of upward moving. The negative self-talk, right? The inner critic seems to be a big one to address, right? And then last but not the least, you were also talking about negative thoughts.
Yes.
So this is basic. I refer to them in my training. So I have this one training called 10x Presence and Self-Awareness. And so the whole purpose, one I would say, or the major focus is become more aware, right? And then use this awareness to actually discover these limiting thoughts or false beliefs, right? And it's very interesting to then, once you become aware of those, that's the first thing. And then actually, so let's say you do this as a simple exercise that every time over the course of the day you become aware, you write it down. So you create a list. And then you can actually classify each thought, whether this is some positivity, maybe it's neutral, right? Or at the end of the day, it's negative, right? And I know a lot of leaders I worked with in the past on this particular topic, that it could be the case that the percentage of those negative thoughts is in general is quite high, right? So if you have a thought that comes to mind in your subconscious mind, you write it down, and in many cases this can actually be negative. And so then if the proportion of negative thoughts is high, that has a lot of negative also ramification, because what you're manifesting is negativity, right? And all those things which are not helpful, right?
Absolutely.
And so it seems, maybe share also a little bit on this one, but this would be looks like the third one, where people could get something out, right? So focus, the inner voice, right? The negativity of this one, and limiting thoughts, false beliefs, or in general, if they're negative. Share a little bit on that particular one, maybe.
Yeah, I can see this enthusiasm with you, and that's why we have 2 full days for this training, and we could do 7 full days because there's so much interesting going on. Okay, just to pick this one out that you just mentioned, we have this KPI. I'm able to let go of negative thoughts when I become aware of them. And the program had a 46% uplift. So it's one of the 3 strongest uplifts that we measured. And this is something that we all know from ourselves, and it's directly connected to this inner critic. We do think a lot about the past, and we do think a lot about the future, and we are not so often in the present moment. So we think about, what did I say wrong? Was that the right decision? What do other people think about me? So there's a lot of those negative thoughts going on, and they are not very helpful. Just think about your consciousness, your mind, like a computer. Yeah? You have 100% processor power, and there is a lot of things happening in the background, a lot of background tasks. And you want to have as much resources for what is happening in the here and now, to enjoy the here and now, but also to do a great job and to have good ideas. But if you have in the background a lot of background jobs running, so for example, the background job, what did I do wrong in the last meeting? Then you can't use all your resources. And actually, there is a good reason why we think so. It's the negativity bias that I just mentioned. So from an evolutionary perspective, it made a lot of sense that people who thought about what can I learn from the past and what can I predict in the future, they survived. Just think about a winter coming, a very cold winter coming, and there is no supermarket because we are like 20,000 years before Christ. And the people who predicted that it will be a cold winter and they collected food, they survived. So it makes a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective. But sometimes this stuff is out of control and it doesn't help us. It just manifests negative thoughts, negative habits, negative beliefs that we have. So becoming aware of this is the first step, because when there is awareness, there's always change. And then actively cultivating positive thoughts, cultivating being in the here and now, cultivating, training this muscle. This is how we can get out of this. And it is not an easy task. For some, it's super difficult because it's also deeply wired and deeply connected in their past and their childhood and so on. So it's not like you do mindfulness training and you are always in the present, but you can go there step by step by step, learn more about yourself, learn more about your core beliefs, learn more about your worldview, and change it step by step. This is what I truly believe in.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I would also summarize here then for the listeners, these 3 areas again, right? There's the focus, there's some self-reflection that was mentioned. There is the inner critic, the inner voice that's basically could be very harsh. There are these limiting thoughts, and I encourage the listener at this point to basically pause, start to reflect, go back the last 10-20 minutes, take really some notes out of these. There were a lot of insights in here, and see what resonates with you.
Yes.
You may get some good ideas out of it. And then also, since we're coming more toward the end of this session, I think one thing I wanted to go in is, as you're searching for the here and now, that is your mission. Could you maybe share also to the listeners parts of how you're doing it as part of maybe your morning routine? Any things that in your typical life, on how maybe 2 or 3 things also that have proven to be very helpful for you, that listeners could benefit by getting some ideas?
Yeah. So you're referring to the podcast Auf der Suche nach dem Hier und Jetzt, which is unfortunately only in German, but you can find it on Spotify and all other platforms. And I started that podcast 4 years ago. And actually, I wanted to write a book 4 years ago about my personal search for here now, to inspire others and to support others. And I just mentioned it before we jumped into this interview that I just started writing that book. So hopefully there will be a book with that name in a few months or years. But actually, this is my personal, this is what really drives me personally. So the idea is that most of the time we are in a doing mode. We want to achieve something to become happy. So we are always thinking about, I just have to get this job and I have to buy this car and I have to be in this house and then one day I will be happy. But I would like to be like a lot of other people, to be in the present moment, to be fulfilled in the present moment with what there actually is. And of course, I can do a good job. I can achieve things, but I'm not connecting this to being happy, to becoming happy. So my personal goal is to be more and more percentage of my everyday life in the being mode and not in the doing mode, to be more in the present and not so much in the past or in the future. And this is my search for here and now. So what I do for myself, there's quite a lot that I'm doing. So most important is my morning routine. So have a morning routine every morning, and there is a negotiable and a non-negotiable part. So the non-negotiable part is that at least 5 minutes, I will sit down, I will count my breath, I will think about what I'm grateful today, and I will set an intention for the day. This is the absolute minimum that I do every day. Even if I have to jump up, go to the plane, then I will do it in the plane, right? And then if I have some time, I try to do 1 hour, and it's a mixture of yoga, qigong, Zen meditation, and affirmation practice. So I'm thinking about what is important for me, what am I thankful for. I connect to myself. I do breath count and body awareness practice and so on. So it's a mixture of a lot of practices. But it helps me really. And I think the most important thing about this morning routine is that during the day, you can always remember this feeling, the state from the morning. So during the day, when I realize, oh, I'm stressed right now, I can take a few deep breaths and I connect to the feeling that I just had in the morning, that I experienced in the morning. So in addition to all those little mindfulness hacks and tricks that I'm using through the day, I always have my, how do you call it? I always can compare it to this feeling that I just had the same day. To give an example for a mindfulness practice, also in our workshops, we work a lot with setting anchors. So you look at your everyday life and you look, what are your routines? What are you doing? So for example, every day I come to my desk and I start my laptop and I open my mail program. And then you can attach to an existing behavior a mindfulness practice. You can connect it, like you can anchor it. So every time when I sit on my stool or my chair, the first thing I do is, I remember 3 deep breaths. I close my eyes, I take 3 deep breaths, and then I start working. Or every time I drink a glass of water, I do a little check-in. How am I doing right now? What do I need? Do I need a break? Do I need some fresh air? What would be good for me, myself? So the more and more of those mindfulness practice you integrate, the more and more normal it becomes, and the more and more you are connected to the here and now. So this is what really drives me and what makes a lot of fun, as you can see right now.
Yeah, I can see that you are enjoying this. Yeah, and so I hope all the listeners took some notes and go back. I mean, that's the beauty of the podcast. I mean, you can basically rewind, and then you get the value out if you actually do this reflection, make some notes, and think about, oh yeah, there was this idea around whatever came up in the past 20 minutes, maybe negative thoughts, focus topics, stress related, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And use it as an inspiration, explore. There is no silver bullet here, as you've seen. I mean, Daniel basically worked on, I'm sure this morning routine and everything is constantly adapted and tweaked. Same for myself. My morning routine is also usually every morning an hour with a variety of different things. And I've seen over time things that work better and have more impact, and others maybe I can do later on over the day, or maybe they're not useful at all. After evaluating, right, it can also be the case. So that's why it's good to have data and figure out how to measure things, which Daniel also has shown can be done indeed on an organizational context for companies, to see what's happening there and what the impact is of mindfulness, or in general mindful leadership topics. So this is great. I think this is a good place now to wrap it up. I'm thankful here for Daniel to join, provide, and share a lot of these cool insights. It was a pleasure having you here, Daniel. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if anyone wants to contact me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Daniel Rieber. You can write me email, daniel@wevolve.company, or you can just tune into the podcast Auf der Suche nach dem Hier und Jetzt. And I'm excited about that session that we had, because we haven't published the results of that case study yet. And I'm really happy that the two of us, we could go through it and answer questions and dive into it. So thanks a lot, Rainer, and keep on doing that podcast.
Sure, thanks. And of course, all those links and mentionings, we'll add them obviously to the show notes. At a later point, if the study becomes public, we'll add slides there as well, if that's feasible. And so everyone listening to this can come back and find all those links and get in touch with you, and go from there. Good.
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks again. And I'm sure I'll see you on another podcast in the future. Okay.
Thanks.